Americans aren't leaving expensive cities because they failed. They're leaving because paying $2,000 in rent for a basic apartment stopped making sense. But what if high rent isn't the real problem in America anymore? What if the real problem is simply knowing where to escape it? In 2026, millions of Americans are quietly packing up and moving to places where rent is still affordable, daily living costs less, and survival doesn't feel like a constant uphill battle. These aren't fantasy towns. They're real American communities people are choosing right now over expensive cities. This year, a quiet migration is happening. Not to luxury hotspots, not to influencer cities, but to livable, overlooked towns where pressure is lighter, expenses are predictable, and life feels manageable again. If escaping high rent, lowering your cost of living, or finding affordable places to live in 2026 matters to you, tap like right now so more people can see this. And as we go, comment the town you'd actually move to. We read every comment. Don't forget to subscribe for honest relocation breakdowns without hype. Let's get into it. The number one on our list is Youngstown, Ohio. And this is one of those places people don't talk about loudly because once you understand the numbers, the move starts to make sense. Youngstown sits in northeast Ohio, and in 2026, it continues to show up in searches like affordable towns to live in America, cheap rent Midwest, and places to escape high rent without going rural. Not because it's trendy, but because it's workable. Here's the reality. In many parts of Youngstown, one-bedroom rents commonly land between about $750 and $950, depending on the neighborhood and condition. Two bedrooms often stay under $1,100, which is something renters in major metro areas haven't seen in years. Property taxes in Ohio remain moderate compared to coastal states, and utilities, especially electricity and heating, are generally lower than the national average. This is a real city, not a ghost town. Youngstown has hospitals, grocery chains, pharmacies, public transit routes, and a university system nearby. That matters because people moving here aren't chasing luxury, they're chasing predictable monthly expenses. Groceries tend to track below national averages, especially if you shop locally. Gas prices are usually lower than coastal states, and healthcare access is one of Youngstown's quiet strengths, with multiple medical centers serving the region. So who is Youngstown actually good for? This town works well for retirees, fixed-income households, remote workers, and people leaving high-cost cities like New York, Chicago, or parts of Pennsylvania. It's also suitable for people who don't need a booming job market to survive, because they already have income coming in, whether that's Social Security, disability, a pension, or online work. If you're someone asking, where can I still live without drowning in rent every month? Youngstown is one of those answers. Now let's be clear and honest, because that's important. Youngstown is not a fast-growing economy. Job opportunities exist, but they're not explosive, and wages in some sectors run lower than national averages. That means this isn't the best place if your survival depends on landing a high-paying local job quickly. There are also neighborhood differences. Some areas are well kept and quiet, while others struggle with vacancy and neglect. Anyone considering a move needs to choose carefully, not blindly. But for the right person, the math still works. Youngstown offers lower rent, manageable taxes, real infrastructure, and a cost of living that doesn't constantly spike. That's why people aren't moving here loudly. They're moving quietly, because affordability like this doesn't last forever once everyone notices. So if you're trying to escape high rent in 2026 and you're prioritizing stability over status, Youngstown earns its spot at number one. It's not about getting rich here. It's about staying housed, staying steady, and finally breathing again. And that's exactly why so many people are putting Youngstown on their short list. The next place Americans are quietly moving to escape high rent in 2026 is Terre, Haute, Indiana. Terre Haute doesn't make national headlines, and that's exactly why it still works. This west-central Indiana city consistently shows up in searches like affordable towns to live in 2026, cheap rent in Indiana, and college towns with low cost of living. It's not flashy, it's functional, and for a lot of Americans right now, that's the priority. Here's why Terre Haute is on the radar. In 2026, Many one-bedroom apartments in Terre, Haute still rent between roughly $700 and $900 a month, with two-bedroom units often landing around $900 to $1,100, depending on location and condition. That alone puts it far below rents in Indianapolis, Chicago, or most major Midwest metros. What helps keep prices steady is structure. Terre Haute is anchored by Indiana State University and several smaller colleges. That creates a constant but controlled housing demand. Enough movement to keep properties maintained, but not enough pressure to send rents spiraling upward. Utilities in Terre Haute typically run below the national average, especially electricity and water. Heating costs during winter remain manageable due to moderate Midwest temperatures, and grocery prices tend to stay predictable, particularly if you shop local or discount chains. Transportation costs are also lighter here. Commutes are short, traffic is minimal, and gas expenses stay low simply because you're not driving long distances just to function. So who does Terre Haute actually work for? This town is especially suitable for students, retirees, remote workers, and people on fixed or modest incomes who want stability without isolation. It also works well for families who value quiet neighborhoods, walkable areas, and dependable services over nightlife and constant entertainment. For people receiving Social Security, disability income, or remote pay, Terre Haute offers something increasingly rare: predictable monthly expenses. Your rent doesn't jump overnight, utilities don't shock you every month, and daily living costs remain stable enough to budget without constant anxiety. Healthcare access is another quiet plus. Terre Haute has regional medical centers, clinics, and pharmacies that serve the area reliably, an important factor for older residents and anyone managing chronic conditions. Now let's talk honestly about the downside. Terre Haute is not a fast-growing job market. If your move depends on finding a high-paying local job quickly, this may not be the best fit. Wages in some sectors remain below national averages, and career advancement can be slower than in larger cities. Entertainment and nightlife are also limited. This isn't a place you move to for excitement. It's a place you move to for peace and affordability. Some areas are college-influenced and lively during the school year, then much quieter in summer. But for the right person, that's not a flaw. It's the point. Terre Haute offers low rent, manageable utilities, steady housing demand, and a cost of living that doesn't constantly chase your paycheck. That's why people priced out of bigger cities aren't announcing their move. They're quietly choosing places like this instead. If escaping high rent in 2026 means trading status for stability, Terre Haute, Indiana, earns its place on the list. Not because it promises more, but because it demands less. Next on the list of places Americans are moving to escape high rent in 2026 is Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Johnstown is one of those towns people stumble onto while searching for cheap rent in Pennsylvania. Affordable Appalachian towns or low cost of living places near major cities. It doesn't try to compete with Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, and that's exactly why it remains affordable. Let's break down why Johnstown still works. In 2026, one-bedroom apartments in many parts of Johnstown commonly fall between about $600 and $850 a month, with some two-bedroom units still staying under $1,000 depending on the neighborhood and condition. For Pennsylvania, that's becoming extremely rare. Property taxes in this region remain lower than in many eastern parts of the state, especially compared to suburban Philadelphia or the Lehigh Valley. Utilities are also manageable. Heating costs are reasonable for a cold weather area, particularly in well-insulated buildings, and electricity prices tend to sit near or slightly below national averages. Day-to-day life costs less here. Groceries, transportation, and basic services consistently come in under what renters are used to paying in larger metro areas. You're not spending extra money just to exist. Location matters too. Johnstown sits in western Pennsylvania, within a reasonable driving distance to Pittsburgh and several mid-sized regional cities. That makes it appealing to people who want access without the price tag. You can reach medical specialists, airports, or larger shopping districts without paying big city rent every month. Healthcare access is another reason people consider Johnstown. The area is served by regional hospitals, clinics, and medical networks, which is a major factor for retirees, disabled residents, and anyone managing long-term health needs. So who does Johnstown work best for? This town is especially suitable for retirees, fixed-income households, remote workers, and people on Social Security or disability income. It also appeals to renters who value quiet living, smaller communities, and predictable expenses, over rapid growth and high competition. If you're someone asking, where can I still live in Pennsylvania without drowning in rent? Johnstown often becomes part of that answer. Now let's talk honestly about what to watch out for. Johnstown's economy is stable, but it's not booming. Job growth is slower, and wages in certain sectors are lower than national averages. This makes the town less ideal if you need immediate high-paying local employment. There are also geographic realities. Parts of Johnstown sit in river valleys, and flood history is something residents take seriously. Anyone considering a move needs to choose neighborhoods carefully and pay attention to elevation and insurance considerations. But for many people, the trade-off still works. Johnstown offers some of the lowest rents in Pennsylvania, manageable taxes, solid healthcare access, and a cost of living that allows fixed incomes to stretch further. That combination is becoming harder to find each year. People aren't moving here for opportunity hype. They're moving here for breathing room. And in 2026, that's exactly why Johnstown, Pennsylvania, earns its place on this list. Next on the list is Danville, Illinois. And Danville tells a very specific story in 2026. You don't always have to leave your state to escape high rent. Sometimes you just have to leave the wrong city. Danville sits near the eastern edge of Illinois, far from Chicago's rent pressure, and it consistently appears in searches like cheap rent in Illinois, affordable Midwest towns, and low cost of living places to live in 2026. It's not trendy. It's not polished for social media. But financially, it still makes sense. Here's what the numbers look like. In 2026, one-bedroom apartments in Danville often range between about $600 and $850 a month, with two-bedroom units frequently landing around $800 to $1,000, depending on the neighborhood and updates. For Illinois, a state known for rising taxes and housing costs, that's becoming increasingly rare. Property taxes in Danville are lower than in northern Illinois suburbs, and many rentals include utilities or keep them modest. Electricity, water, and trash service typically stay close to or slightly below national averages, helping residents avoid unpredictable monthly spikes. Groceries and daily essentials cost less here, too. Danville benefits from regional supply chains and discount retailers, which helps stretch smaller budgets further. Transportation costs are low simply because the town is compact, commutes are short, traffic is light. You're not burning gas just to get through your day. Another factor people overlook is healthcare access. Danville has regional hospitals, clinics, and specialty providers, which makes it viable for retirees, older residents, and anyone managing ongoing health needs. You don't have to drive hours just to see a doctor. A big deal for people on fixed incomes. So who does Danville actually work for? This town is particularly suitable for retirees, Social Security recipients, disabled adults, remote workers, and Illinois residents who want to stay in-state without paying Chicago area rent. It also works for families who prioritize affordable housing and stability over nightlife and fast-paced growth. If your income is predictable, whether from retirement, disability, or remote work, Danville's low rent and steady expenses can make monthly budgeting feel possible again. Now let's be honest about the downside. Danville's local job market is limited. If you're relying on finding a high-paying job after you move, options can be narrow, and wages in some sectors are lower than the national average. This is not a city people move to for rapid career growth. Some neighborhoods are also uneven. Like many older Midwest towns, Danville has areas that are well-kept and quiet, and others that are struggling with vacancy. Anyone considering a move needs to research carefully and choose location wisely. But for the right person, those trade-offs are acceptable. Danville offers Illinois living without Illinois-level rent, manageable utilities, real healthcare access, and a cost of living that doesn't constantly punish people on fixed or modest incomes. That's why people aren't shouting about Danville online. They're using it. And in 2026, that quiet practicality is exactly what earns Danville, Illinois, its place on this list. The next place Americans are quietly moving to escape high rent in 2026 is Florence, South Carolina. Florence flies under the radar because it sits inland, away from the coastal pressure that's been driving rents through the roof in places like Charleston and Myrtle Beach. That location alone is a major reason Florence keeps showing up in searches like affordable towns in South Carolina, cheap rent in the South, and best places to live on a fixed income in 2026. This is Southern affordability without tourist inflation. Let's talk numbers. In 2026, one-bedroom apartments in Florence commonly rent between about $800 and $1,000, with some older or smaller units coming in slightly lower. Two-bedroom rentals often fall in the $1,000 to $1,200 range, depending on proximity to downtown and healthcare hubs. While Florence isn't the cheapest town on this list, what it offers is predictability. South Carolina's property taxes remain relatively low, especially compared to many northern states. Utilities are reasonable, and because winters are mild, heating costs stay low throughout the year. For many households, that alone creates meaningful monthly savings. Groceries and daily essentials are also affordable. Regional supply chains and discount retailers help keep food costs stable, and transportation expenses stay manageable thanks to short drive times and light congestion. Healthcare access is one of Florence's biggest advantages. Florence is home to regional hospitals, specialty clinics, and medical centers that serve a wide area of South Carolina. That's a major reason retirees and older adults consider it. You don't have to choose between affordability and access to care. So who does Florence actually work for? This city is especially suitable for retirees, healthcare workers, fixed-income households, remote workers, and families seeking southern living without coastal pricing. It's also attractive to people leaving colder states who want a warmer climate and lower winter utility bills. Florence offers just enough city infrastructure to stay comfortable: shopping, dining, healthcare, and services, without the pressure or pricing of larger metros. Now let's talk honestly about the downside. Florence summers are hot and humid, which can be an adjustment for people coming from cooler climates. Air conditioning becomes a necessity for several months of the year, which can raise electric bills during peak summer. The job market is steady but not expansive. While healthcare and logistics provide employment, high-paying corporate opportunities are limited. This makes Florence better suited for people with stable income already in place. The next town Americans are choosing to escape high rent in 2026 is Lima, Ohio. Lima rarely shows up in flashy relocation lists, and that's exactly why its numbers still make sense. This small city in northwest Ohio consistently appears in searches like cheap rent Midwest, affordable Ohio towns to live, and low cost of living cities in America. It's practical, steady, and built for people who care more about monthly survival than status. Let's break it down. In 2026, one-bedroom apartments in Lima commonly fall between about $600 and $850 a month, with two-bedroom units often staying near $800 to $1,000, depending on the neighborhood. That puts Lima well below national rent averages and far below nearby metro areas. Utilities in Lima are another advantage. Electricity, water, and trash services typically run below the national average, and winter heating costs remain manageable due to compact housing layouts and moderate Midwest weather. Groceries are affordable, especially when using local chains and discount stores, which helps stretch fixed incomes further. Transportation costs are low here. Lima is easy to navigate, traffic is minimal, and commutes are short. You're not spending money just to sit in traffic or maintain long daily drives. Healthcare access is a quiet strength. Lima is served by regional hospitals, clinics, and specialty care providers, which matters for retirees, disabled residents, and anyone managing ongoing medical needs. You don't need to leave town for most routine or specialized care. So who does Lima work best for? This town is particularly suitable for retirees, Social Security recipients, disabled adults, budget-focused households, and remote workers who don't rely on big city job markets. It's also a fit for people who value predictable expenses, quieter neighborhoods, and a slower pace of life. If your income is steady but limited, Lima offers something rare in 2026: housing that doesn't consume your entire monthly check. Now the downside, and it's important to be upfront. Lima is not a growth hub. Job opportunities exist, but wages in some sectors are lower than national averages, and career advancement can be limited. Entertainment and nightlife are minimal, and the town may feel too quiet for those used to constant activity. There are also neighborhood differences, which means choosing the right area matters. Some parts of Lima are well-maintained and peaceful, while others are still recovering from economic shifts. But for the right person, the math still works. Lima offers low rent, manageable utilities, solid healthcare access, and a cost of living that allows fixed incomes to stretch further. That's why people aren't moving here for opportunity hype. They're moving here for stability. And in 2026, that stability is exactly why Lima, Ohio earns its spot on this list. Next on the list of places Americans are moving to escape high rent in 2026 is Hutchinson, Kansas. Hutchinson is the kind of town people find when they start searching for cheap Midwest towns to live, low cost of living Kansas, or affordable places to relocate in 2026. It doesn't try to sell a lifestyle. It quietly offers numbers that still work. And in today's housing market, that's powerful. Here's what affordability looks like in Hutchinson. In 2026, one-bedroom rents in Hutchinson often land between about $600 and $800 a month, with many two-bedroom units sitting around $850 to $1,000, depending on age and location. For a town with solid infrastructure, that keeps housing well below national averages. Kansas also helps renters by keeping property taxes and insurance costs relatively modest, and utilities in Hutchinson tend to stay predictable. Electricity and water costs remain reasonable, and heating bills during winter are manageable thanks to compact housing and flat terrain. Daily life costs less here. Groceries are affordable, especially through regional and discount chains. Transportation expenses stay low because Hutchinson is easy to navigate. Short drives, minimal traffic, and low fuel consumption. Healthcare access is another reason people consider this town. Hutchinson is home to regional hospitals, clinics, and specialty care, which means residents don't have to travel far for medical services. This is especially important for retirees and people on fixed income. So, who does Hutchinson work best for? This town is particularly suitable for retirees, Social Security recipients, disabled adults, remote workers, and families prioritizing stability over speed. It also appeals to people who want a quiet, low-pressure environment where monthly expenses don't constantly change. If your income is steady, whether from retirement, disability, or remote work, Hutchinson allows for clean budgeting and financial predictability. Now let's talk about the trade-offs. Hutchinson has a slower pace of life. Job growth is modest, and wages in some sectors are lower than national averages. Entertainment options are limited, and the town may feel too quiet for people coming from large cities. Weather can also be a consideration. Kansas sees hot summers and cold winters, with wind being a regular factor. While this doesn't usually increase rent, it can affect comfort and utility use seasonally. Still, the core math holds. Hutchinson offers low rent, predictable utilities, solid healthcare access, and a cost of living that remains manageable in 2026. That's why people looking to escape high rent aren't rushing here loudly. They're choosing it carefully. And for those prioritizing survival, stability, and affordability over hype, Hutchinson, Kansas earns its place on this list. Next on the list of places Americans are moving to escape high rent in 2026 is Pueblo, Colorado. And Pueblo is different, because this is Colorado living without Colorado prices. When most people think of Colorado, they picture Denver, Boulder, or ski towns where rent can easily clear $2,000 a month. Pueblo tells a different story. That's why it keeps popping up in searches like cheapest places to live in Colorado, affordable Colorado towns, and escape high rent without leaving the West. Here's how the numbers actually shake out. In 2026, one-bedroom apartments in Pueblo often rent between about $850 and $1,100, with some older units dipping slightly lower. Two-bedroom rentals commonly fall in the $1,000 to $1,300 range, which is still significantly cheaper than most of the Colorado Front Range. Utilities in Pueblo tend to stay near or slightly below national averages. Heating costs are manageable thanks to dry winters and plenty of sun, and cooling costs stay reasonable compared to more humid states. Water and electricity remain predictable, a big deal for anyone budgeting carefully. Groceries and transportation are also affordable by Colorado standards. Pueblo benefits from regional supply chains, and because the city is spread out but not congested, fuel costs stay reasonable. You're not paying extra just to move through daily life. One of Pueblo's biggest advantages is location. You're in Colorado, with access to mountains, open space, and outdoor recreation, but without big city pressure. At the same time, Pueblo has real infrastructure: hospitals, clinics, shopping centers, schools, and public services. This combination is exactly why people priced out of Denver and Colorado Springs are quietly looking south. So who does Pueblo work best for? Pueblo is well suited for remote workers, retirees, fixed-income households, outdoor-oriented individuals, and people who want Western living without luxury pricing. It also attracts people leaving high-cost coastal states who still want space, sunlight, and access to nature. Healthcare access is solid. Pueblo is home to regional medical centers and specialty providers, which makes it viable for older residents and anyone managing health conditions. Now let's talk honestly about the downside. Pueblo's job market is mixed. While healthcare, education, and some industrial sectors provide employment, wages can vary widely, and high-paying corporate roles are limited. This makes Pueblo a better fit for people who already have stable income, rather than those relying on immediate job growth. There are also neighborhood differences. Some areas are well-maintained and community-oriented, while others are still working through economic challenges. Choosing the right part of town matters, but for many, the trade-off is worth it. Pueblo offers one of the lowest costs of living in Colorado: manageable rent, real services, and access to the Western lifestyle without constant financial pressure. That combination is rare, and it's why people aren't shouting about Pueblo online. They're moving quietly. Coming in next on the list of places Americans are moving to escape high rent in 2026 is Wichita Falls, Texas. Wichita Falls stands out for one major reason that keeps showing up in search trends like best tax-friendly states to live, no state income tax places to move, and affordable towns in Texas to live in 2026. Texas has no state income tax, and in Wichita Falls, that advantage actually translates into real monthly relief. Here's how the numbers look. In 2026, one-bedroom apartments in Wichita Falls commonly rent between about $750 and $950, with many two-bedroom units falling near $900 to $1,100, depending on age and location. Compared to Dallas, Austin, or even smaller Texas metros, that's a dramatic difference. Because there's no state income tax, more of your Social Security, disability check, pension, or paycheck stays in your pocket each month. That alone can equal several $100s a year in savings compared to income tax states. Property taxes in Texas are higher than some states, but for renters, this is often baked into rent and offset by lower overall housing costs in smaller cities like Wichita Falls. Utilities remain reasonable, and because winters are mild, heating bills stay low. Cooling costs rise in summer, but rates are generally predictable. Groceries and transportation are affordable. Wichita Falls benefits from Texas-scale supply chains, which keep food prices competitive. Commutes are short, traffic is minimal, and fuel costs stay manageable compared to larger cities. Healthcare access is another plus. Wichita Falls has regional hospitals, clinics, and specialty providers, which makes it suitable for retirees, disabled residents, and families needing regular medical care. Military presence also supports steady infrastructure and services. So who does Wichita Falls work best for? This town is especially suitable for retirees, Social Security recipients, disabled adults, military families, remote workers, and anyone seeking tax-friendly living without big city costs. It's also appealing for people leaving higher tax states who want to stretch fixed income further. If you're calculating every dollar, the lack of state income tax alone can change your monthly math. That's why people aren't flooding here loudly. They're moving thoughtfully. And in a year when affordability matters more than hype, Wichita Falls, Texas earns its place on this list. Finally, Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville is one of the last places in America where the numbers still favor survival. And that's why people are moving here quietly in 2026. This city shows up again and again in searches like cheapest places to live in Texas, low rent towns with no state income tax, and best cities to live on Social Security. Here's why. In 2026, one-bedroom rents in Brownsville often sit between about $700 and $900, with two-bedroom units commonly landing under $1,200. That's rare anywhere in Texas, and almost non-existent nationwide. Texas has no state income tax, so every dollar of Social Security, disability income, pension, or remote pay goes further here. You're not losing money to the state before you even pay rent. Daily costs stay low. Groceries, especially fresh food, are well below national averages. Gas and transportation costs stay manageable because commutes are short and traffic is light. Utilities stay predictable. Winters are warm, so heating costs are almost non-existent. Summer cooling is required, but electric rates remain far lower than big Texas cities. Healthcare access is solid. Brownsville has regional hospitals and clinics, making it workable for retirees and anyone managing health needs without expensive travel. So who does Brownsville work for? This city is a strong fit for retirees, Social Security and SSI recipients, disabled adults, bilingual households, remote workers, and anyone living on a tight but steady income. If your goal is to stretch every dollar, Brownsville gives you one of the longest runways left in America. Now, the quick downside. Summers are hot and humid, and wages for local jobs are lower than national averages. This place works best if your income is already secured. But the math is simple: low rent, no state income tax, cheap groceries, real health care. That's why people aren't talking loudly about Brownsville. They're moving before the numbers change. And in 2026, Brownsville, Texas closes this list as one of America's strongest affordability pressure release valves left.